Dad pushed the door open, finding Mom with another man right there on our living room couch. The air sucked out of the house. Gary Peterson scrambled, his shirt half-buttoned, tripping over the rug as he bolted. Mom just sat there, fixing her hair, a faint, unapologetic smile playing on her lips. "He was leaving anyway," she said, her voice flat. "It always made me wonder why anyone bothered getting married anymore. The statistics were everywhere. Half the people you knew ended up splitting, picking apart their lives, carving up assets. It felt like a gamble nobody ever won in the long run." My parents, Frank and Carol Jensen, they seemed to have beaten the odds for a while. Their marriage was built on the kind of hard work you saw in a lot of Midwestern families back then. Dad worked 2 jobs, sometimes 3, for years. He put in the overtime at the factory, then picked up shifts at the lumberyard on weekends. Everything he did, every extra hour, was for the house, for us kids, for the life he was building. Mom handled the home, made sure we were fed, dressed, at school on time. It felt solid, like the concrete foundation Dad poured for our garage himself. Mom had started working at the district office after Sarah, our youngest, went into kindergarten. It was part-time at first, just a few hours. Then it became full-time. She said it was good to get out, to use her mind. We didn't see much difference at first. Dinner was still on the table. Laundry still got done. But then things shifted, subtle at first, like a slow leak you don't notice until the floorboards warp. As a teenager, I started picking up on things. The late nights began slowly, then picked up speed. Business trips, Mom would say, always on a Thursday or Friday. She'd come back Sunday night, sometimes Monday morning. When she did come home, the first thing she'd do was head for the shower, even if it was late and she'd been gone for days. New clothes started appearing in her closet, expensive things she wouldn't have bought working at the district office. Not the kind of practical clothes she usually wore. The phone calls became a routine. Mom would take them in the laundry room, sometimes in the garage, her voice a low murmur. If one of us walked in, she'd snap shut the flip phone, her eyes a little too wide, a quick smile that didn't quite reach them. Then the disappearances started. "I'm just running to the store," she'd say, and not come back until long after dinner. Once, she didn't come back until after Mike and Sarah were asleep. I was sitting in the dark living room watching the street, and she walked in smelling like expensive perfume and something else I couldn't place. Dad found out the way most men do, I guess. He came home early from a double shift. Said he'd felt a chill, something not right. He walked into the living room and found Mom there with Gary Peterson, her boss. Gary, red-faced and fumbling, scrambled off the couch. Dad didn't speak. He just moved. His hands found Gary Peterson's collar, twisting the shirt fabric, then shoved him back hard against the wall. Gary hit with a dull thud, gasping. Dad didn't throw a punch, not exactly, but he slammed him against the wall again, a cold fury in his eyes that made Gary's face go pale. Gary Peterson stumbled backward, then turned and half crawled, half ran out the front door, tripping over the porch step. Mom just watched him go, then turned to Dad, adjusting the collar of her blouse. Not a flicker of fear or shame, just a blankness. The house went quiet after that, a different kind of quiet. Later, Dad talked to a lawyer. I sat in the room listening. The lawyer, a man named Mr. Henderson, spoke about no-fault divorce. He explained that in our state, it didn't matter what Mom did. Adultery, betrayal, none of it mattered in terms of the legal split. There was no punishment. The house was hers just as much as it was Dad's. Mom, when Dad tried to make her leave, just folded her arms and said, "I'm not going anywhere. This is my home." Dad tried talking to his lawyer about getting her out. Mr. Henderson just shook his head. "Oh, Jensen, it doesn't work that way anymore. The law sees it as a partnership, 50-50 usually. She has every right to be there." Dad's face was stone. He couldn't live under the same roof with her. He found a small apartment on the other side of town, just enough for himself. He couldn't take us all. Not yet. I stood in the kitchen doorway the night he left, Mom stirring something on the stove, humming softly. "I'm going with Dad," I said. My voice sounded flat, even to me. She turned, her eyebrows raised. "Doug, don't be ridiculous. Your father's apartment is tiny." "I don't care," I said. "I'm not staying here." My stomach felt knotted. The smell of the food made me sick. I'm disgusted, Mom, truly disgusted. She just sighed, turning back to the stove. Mike and Sarah didn't understand. Mike kept asking where Dad was going, why he couldn't stay. Sarah just cried, clinging to Dad's leg as he carried his last box out the door. Mom arranged the visits. Every other weekend, we'd go to Dad's apartment. He tried to put on a brave face, but his eyes looked tired, bruised. One Saturday, after Mike and Sarah were watching cartoons, Dad and I sat on his worn couch. The place was sparse, barely decorated. "They're my only reason, Doug," he said, his voice quiet. "You kids. I'll fight for custody, I promise you that." I was old enough, 12, when it went to court. The judge called me into his chambers, a quiet room with heavy drapes and a big dark wood desk. He asked me, calm and direct, where I wanted to live. I didn't hesitate. "With my dad," I said. My voice didn't waver. I told him why, not in an angry way, just factual. I told him about the late nights, the phone calls, about Gary Peterson. The judge listened, his face unreadable. But the law was the law. Mike was 8, Sarah was 6. They were too young, the judge said, to make such a big decision. He awarded custody of all 3 of us to Mom. It felt like a punch, even though I'd seen it coming. The one small victory, Dad's lawyer explained, was that Mom hadn't asked for alimony, just reasonable child support. "It'll be tight," Dad said, "but I won't be destitute." He'd kept his factory job, still picked up extra shifts when he could. He was determined to make it work. The next 4 years were a grind. Living with Mom felt like a constant battle. The resentment in me festered, a slow burn that wouldn't go out. She started dating again, men coming and going through the house like revolving doors. Each time she introduced one of them, I'd make sure to let him know. "My mom," I'd say, looking him dead in the eye, "she cheated on my dad with her boss." Sometimes the men would clear their throats, their eyes darting to Mom. Sometimes they'd just stare at me. Every time, it felt like a small win. I left her in tears more times than I could count. It wasn't intentional, not really. It was just the truth, stated plainly. "Why are you always so mean, Doug?" She'd sometimes sob, her voice thin. "You're trying to ruin my life." "My life was ruined first," I'd reply, and walk away. The air in the house was thick with it, a suffocating silence when we were alone. By the time I was 16, we barely spoke. I spent every possible moment out of the house, at friends' places, working my part-time job at the grocery store, anywhere but home. Dad, meanwhile, slowly rebuilt his life. He worked, he saved, he made his apartment a home. Then he met Naomi Cooper. She was a fellow divorcee with a quiet strength about her and a kind smile. When Dad first introduced us, I was wary. But Naomi wasn't like Mom. She listened. She looked you in the eye. She genuinely seemed to care. She loved us, all 3 of us. She treated Mike and Sarah like her own, always asking about their day, making sure they had what they needed. It was a warmth I hadn't felt in years. Naomi had a daughter, Chloe. Chloe was a year younger than me, bright and quick-witted. She fit right in. It felt like we'd gained a sister, not just a stepsister. We'd all pile into Dad's car on weekends, go hiking, or to the drive-in. It felt like a family again, even if it wasn't the one I'd grown up in. Dad was hesitant to remarry. His first marriage had left deep scars. But he and Naomi moved in together. They built a life, a shared routine. It wasn't legal, but it was real. They were committed. It was good to see him happy, truly happy, for the first time in years. When I turned 18, just after high school graduation, I made my move. I'd saved enough from my grocery store job for a deposit on a cheap apartment a few blocks from Dad's. I told Mom I was leaving. She just nodded, her face grim. "Are you sure this is what you want, Doug?" "Absolutely," I said. "I can't stay here anymore. Not with you." My final words to her were a dam breaking. "You destroyed everything, Mom," I said, my voice low and steady. "You think you got away with it, but you ruined us. You ruined Dad. You ruined this family. And you ruined me." Her face crumpled. Tears started to stream down her cheeks, a quiet, helpless cry. Even after all those years, after all the anger and the distance, it still stung to see her like that. But I didn't stop. I couldn't. I packed my meager belongings into my beat-up car, As I carried the last box, I found Mike and Sarah standing in the doorway, their eyes wide and sad. "I'll be close," I told them, pulling them into a tight hug. "I'll always be here for you, okay? Always." I looked over their heads, past them, to Mom standing in the kitchen, still crying. Then I turned and walked out the door, not looking back. That experience, watching my parents' marriage crumble, seeing what betrayal could do, it left a mark. I vowed then and there that I would be monogamous, and I would expect the same absolute fidelity from any woman I ever chose to be with. It was the only way, I thought, to avoid the same kind of wreckage. After high school, I kept working at the grocery store for a while, saving up. Then I got a job as an entry-level engineer at a small manufacturing firm in town. It wasn't glamorous, but it was steady, good pay. I started taking night classes at the community college, working towards a degree. My dating life was sparse. The betrayal I'd witnessed in my own home had left a mark, made me cautious. I didn't want to rush into anything, not with anyone. I needed to find someone I could trust, someone real. I was 21 when I met Brenda Miller. It was at some corporate networking event, one of those forced mixers where everyone makes polite small talk. She was a recent university graduate, working part-time as a sales rep for a pharmaceutical company. Her company had a booth next to ours. We hit it off immediately, talking about everything and nothing. She laughed easily, had a quick wit, her eyes were bright, and she wasn't afraid to meet mine. Before the night was over, I had her number. My roommate, Tim Harris, saw the look on my face when I got back to our apartment. "Hot date, huh?" he'd asked, grinning as I tossed my keys on the counter. "Just met someone," I'd replied, trying to play it cool. But inside I felt something stir. It had been a long time since I felt that flicker of genuine interest. I waited a couple of days to call her. Didn't want to seem too eager, too desperate. You learn these things. When I finally dialed, she picked up on the third ring. Her voice was bright. "Doug, I was wondering if you'd call." She sounded genuinely excited, eager to meet. That made me feel good. I wasn't rich, not by a long shot, but I was stable. I had my job, my apartment. I felt comfortable enough to take her out. I tidied up my place, put on a decent shirt. It wasn't a fancy suit, but it was clean. We agreed to meet at a local bar, a place called the Corner Tap. I preferred first dates at a bar. Less pressure than dinner, easier to talk, to see if there was a real connection without the formality of a full meal. I got there a few minutes early, found a booth. She was already there, perched on a stool at the bar, sipping something light. Her hair was pulled back, a few loose strands framing her face. She looked up when I walked in, and her eyes lit up. A genuine, bright smile spread across her face. My heart gave a little jump. It was real. I felt it, an immediate pull. We talked for hours over a couple of beers. She told me about her job, how it was temporary. "It's fine for now," she said, "but you wouldn't believe the guys, married guys mostly, they act like you're just a piece of meat." She rolled her eyes. "Seriously, it's disgusting. Don't they have wives at home?" Her words hit me. Disgust, that was the word. It was exactly what I'd felt, what I still felt, about Mom. It wasn't just men, I realized. It was people. Both sexes capable of the same kind of betrayal. My mother had been the example I'd carried, the reason for my caution. But hearing Brenda, a woman, express such clear disgust for infidelity, it was a confirmation. It wasn't just Dad who got cheated on. It wasn't just men who strayed. That night, after I dropped Brenda off, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I got back to my apartment and sat down at my computer, Googling infidelity statistics. The numbers shocked me. It wasn't rare. It was everywhere, 1 in 5 marriages. Some studies said even higher. It felt like a plague, quietly eating away at the foundations of families all over the country. The irony wasn't lost on me either. Our state, in the heart of the Midwest, was known for being conservative, for its family values. But I'd heard the whispers, seen the headlines about small-town scandals, the quiet affairs that broke apart lives. It seemed we were just as bad as anywhere else, maybe worse, given how good we were at pretending otherwise. It was a cold truth, stark and unsettling. Brenda and I moved in together after a year. It felt natural, an easy progression. We found a small 2-bedroom apartment that was just enough. It wasn't fancy, but it was ours, a space we built together. We shared responsibilities, split bills, and found comfort in the steady rhythm of our days. She understood my past, never judged. She listened when I talked about mom, about dad, about the way things had fallen apart. She fit right in with my family, which was important to me. She treated dad with respect and Naomi like an older sister. Chloe adored Brenda, and Brenda returned the affection, always asking about her school, her plans. Mike and Sarah came over all the time. They were getting older, teenagers now, and they still often used me as an escape from mom's house. Brenda never minded. She'd make them dinner, play board games with them, just like an older sister would. She was good for them, a stable presence. Dad, ever the cautious one, pulled me aside before I proposed. "Are you sure, Doug?" he asked, his eyes serious. "Marriage, it's a big step. You got to be sure. With everything that happened, make sure she's the right one. Make sure you know her character." I told him I was sure. I'd seen enough, lived enough. I knew what I wanted, and I knew what I wouldn't tolerate. Brenda and I got married in a small ceremony. Just close family, Naomi, Chloe, Mike, Sarah. We stood there looking into each other's eyes and made our vows. We talked about honesty, about fidelity, about never repeating the mistakes we'd seen. It wasn't just words, it was a promise, a pact against the quiet rot that had consumed my parents' marriage. We bought a small house, a modest place with a decent yard and a quiet neighborhood. It was the kind of place you saw all over the Midwest, solid and unpretentious. We settled into a quiet, hard-working life. Weekends were for yard work, for barbecues with Date and Naomi, for board game nights with Mike and Sarah. It was good. It felt stable. It felt real. My engineering career steadily advanced. I was moving up, taking on more responsibility, eyeing a management position. Brenda, too, found her footing. She left the sales rep job, found a position in marketing, and thrived. She had a knack for it, a way with people that got things done. She eventually became a manager herself, a testament to her intelligence and drive. We decided to have children. It was the next natural step, building our own family, a new foundation. We wanted the kind of stable, loving home we both felt we hadn't quite had. The first few years of our marriage were blissful. We built something together, brick by brick. There was mutual respect, shared dreams. Every day I woke up feeling grateful. I still thought about mom's betrayal sometimes, the sharp, cold memory of it. But instead of bitterness, it became a reminder to cherish Brenda, to never take what we had for granted. It felt like I was actively building a life that defied the past, brick by brick. Brenda occasionally brought it up too, usually after a long day at work. "Some of the guys, she'd say, a small frown on her face, "they just don't get it. They still come on to me, even with my ring visible, like I'm just available." She'd shake her head. "It's annoying. Makes me feel like I'm still just a piece of meat." I'd pull her close, hold her tight. "You're not, Brenda. You're my wife, and I trust you. Completely." I'd tell her I loved her, that she was beautiful, and that I was lucky to have her. I meant every word. We celebrated anniversaries, each one a marker of our growing bond. We felt closer, more intertwined with each passing year. It felt like we were invincible, impervious to the temptations and betrayals that seemed to plague so many others. A quiet contentment settled over our lives, a deep, abiding peace that was a stark, comforting contrast to the chaos of my youth. It felt like we had finally built something truly strong. Life settled into its own rhythm. Work, kids, the endless cycle of school pickups, dinner, homework, bedtime. The initial spark that had felt so incandescent, that promise of invincibility, slowly became covered with the dust of routine. It wasn't bad, not exactly. It was just quiet, comfortable. Then the shifts began again. Small at first, like a faint tremor you barely register. Brenda started working longer hours. Her job had become more demanding, she said, with new responsibilities. I understood. I was advancing in my own career, knew the pressures. She started showering as soon as she walked in the door. "Long day," she'd say, heading straight for the bathroom. I sweat a lot at the office. Her work clothes started changing too. More stylish, more expensive, She called it business casual, but it looked like she was dressing for something more. Slim-cut dresses, tailored blazers, shoes with sharper heels. A new phone appeared, sleeker, fancier than her old one. Work perk, she explained, but she guarded it. It was always with her, face down on the table, or tucked into her pocket. The late-night texts and calls started, quiet buzzes and muted rings. Work emergency, she'd whisper, stepping out of the room or into the garage. The explanations were always quick, dismissive. Then came the girls' trips, weekends away, or business conferences, always in another city, always requiring an overnight stay. They started out reasonable, once every few months. Then they became more frequent, and sometimes they stretched. A Friday-Sunday trip might end up with her not getting back until Monday afternoon. She'd always have a reason. Traffic, a late flight, an unexpected extension of the conference. A cold dread began to settle in my gut, a familiar feeling from my childhood. It was a slow, creeping unease. I tried to rationalize it away. My past, I told myself, was making me paranoid. This wasn't Mom. This was Brenda, my wife, the woman I trusted. I tried to blame my own trauma, tried to push the dark thoughts back down, but the distance grew. Brenda became quick to anger, quick to dismiss my concerns. If I asked about her day, really asked, she'd shrug. Same old. If I tried to touch her, to pull her close on the couch, she'd stiffen. Our intimacy waned. I'm just so tired, Doug, she'd say, turning away. So stressed with work. Maybe we should go out, I suggested once. Just the two of us, a date night. She shook her head. I really don't have the energy. Maybe next week. Or counseling, I ventured carefully. Just to talk things out. It feels like we're drifting. Her eyes flashed. Drifting? Nothing's drifting, Doug. Everything's fine. You're just overthinking. But I wasn't. The unease sharpened. I started noticing things. Small things. Her car's mileage, for instance. She'd say she went to a conference an hour away, but the odometer would show more miles than that. A lot more. Or she'd say she'd been at the office until late, but the gas tank seemed to reflect more driving than a direct commute. I kept quiet, watching. One afternoon, helping her clean out her purse, something she usually guarded fiercely, a small receipt fluttered out. It was from a jewelry store, one of the fancier ones downtown. A man's watch. A good one. And I hadn't received any gift. My breath caught. The receipt was dated just last month. For a moment, the world seemed to tilt. The carefully constructed life, the one I'd built so meticulously, felt like it was crumbling. The rose-colored prism, the one that filtered out the harsh realities, shattered in that moment. It was replaced by a chilling clarity. The familiar dread, the one I knew from childhood, returned with a vengeance. Something was deeply, profoundly wrong. It felt like the air had been sucked out of the room, just like it had all those years ago. You want to see how life's costly choices truly unfold? Stick around to the end. The receipt for the watch was a cold, hard stone in my stomach. My suspicions, once nagging whispers, turned into a deafening roar. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. Every smile Brenda offered felt like a lie. Every touch a betrayal. I started watching her, really watching. Not like a husband, but like a detective. One morning when I leaned in to kiss her goodbye, I caught a scent on her shirt. Not her perfume, not mine. It was a man's cologne, sharp and expensive. It lingered, clinging to the fabric. My blood ran cold. That night, after everyone was asleep, the house quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator, I made my move. Brenda's work phone was on her nightstand, charging. I knew her password. It was our anniversary date. She hadn't changed it in years. My hands trembled as I unlocked it. The texts were there, buried deep in a hidden folder I found only after digging for what felt like an hour. Messages with a contact simply saved as Mark. My vision blurred. Lunch was amazing today. Can't wait for Friday. You look incredible, B. Wish you were here. And her replies, thinking of you, counting down the minutes. He's so oblivious. The words were like tiny, sharp knives twisting in my gut. It was all there, laid bare. The secret meetings, the shared lunches, the thinly veiled affections. A profound sense of déjà vu washed over me, a wave of nausea. This was it. The exact same pain my father must have felt. The same sickening realization. I scrolled through the messages, my chest tight. I saw his last name mentioned, then his title. Brenda's new boss, Mark. The chill ran deeper. The precision of it. Just like Mom and Gary Peterson. History, it seemed, wasn't just repeating. It was mocking me. I didn't sleep at all. I just sat there, the phone heavy in my hand, watching the first hint of dawn creep through the window. When Brenda woke up, blinking, stretching, I was already dressed. "We need to talk," I said, my voice flat, devoid of any warmth. She looked at me, a quick flash of defensiveness in her eyes. "What's wrong, Doug? You look terrible." I held up the phone. The screen displayed a string of texts between her and Mark. "This is what's wrong, Brenda." She froze. Her face went pale. "Doug, I can explain." "Don't." I cut her off. My voice was calm, unnervingly so, even to my own ears. "Just tell me, is it true?" She stared at the phone, then at me, her shoulders slumped. A sob tore from her throat. "Yes," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Yes, it's true." Then came the excuses, a torrent of them. "I felt neglected, Doug. You're always so busy." Mark, he understood me. He made me feel seen, like I was exciting again. She talked about being bored, about needing something more, something new. The words were a blur of self-pity and blame, none of it landing on her own shoulders. A cold fury, sharp and precise, surged through me. It wasn't an uncontrolled rage, but a deliberate, chilling anger, a familiar ghost from my youth. "His full name," I demanded, my voice low, dangerous, "and his contact information. Now." She flinched, looking genuinely terrified. "Doug, please, don't do anything stupid. It's not worth it." "His name, Brenda. All of it." Trembling, she gave me the information, scribbling it down on a piece of paper, her hand shaking so hard the pen dug into the page. I took the paper. "Pack your bags, Brenda. You need to leave tonight." Her eyes widened. "What? Doug, no, this is my home, our home." "Not anymore," I said, the words cutting like ice. "You don't get to stay here. Not after this." I walked out of the bedroom, found my phone, and dialed Dad's number. It was still early, but I knew he'd be awake. He answered on the second ring, his voice thick with sleep. "Dad," I started, and then the words caught in my throat. My voice trembled. "It happened, Dad, just like you said it might. She cheated." Dad arrived within 20 minutes. He didn't say much, just walked in, took one look at my face and then at Brenda, who was still sitting on the edge of the bed, sobbing. He put a hand on my shoulder, a quiet, solid presence. He knew. He'd lived it. "The kids are at school," I told Brenda, my voice clipped. "You need to pack your things and leave before they get home." She looked up, her face tear-streaked. "Doug, please. Where am I supposed to go? I don't have anywhere." "That's not my problem," I said, cold as stone. "You made your choices. You can go to a hotel. You can go to a friend's. But you're not staying here. I won't sleep under the same roof as you." Dad cleared his throat gently. "Doug, son, we need to be careful with the legal side of things. She has rights." "I don't care about rights right now, Dad," I replied, my eyes fixed on Brenda. "I care about living with some dignity." She leaves. Brenda shrank back, pulling a small suitcase from the closet. She started stuffing clothes into it, her movements jerky. I pulled out my phone, found Mark's number from Brenda's texts. My hand was steady as I dialed. He answered on the second ring, his voice cheerful, unsuspecting. "Mark speaking." "This is Doug Jensen," I said, my voice low and even. "Brenda's husband. I need to talk to you. Now." A beat of silence, then a nervous cough. Mr. Jensen, I'm not sure what this is about." "Don't play dumb, Mark. I know everything. I have the texts. I know you've been sleeping with my wife." My voice stayed level, but the suppressed anger was a hum beneath the words. "You're going to meet me. Where are you?" He stammered, tried to deny it, then gave up. "Look, I'm sorry, Mr. Jensen. It was a mistake, a big mistake." "Damn right it was," I said. "Where are you?" He gave me his office address. "Stay away from my family, Mark," I warned him, the threat clear, unmistakable. Stay away from my kids. If I ever see you near them, I swear to God. I didn't finish the sentence. He hung up. I watched Brenda pack. She avoided my eyes, her shoulders shaking. When her small suitcase was full, she hesitated at the door. Doug, go, I said. Just go. She left, the front door closing with a soft click that echoed in the sudden silence. Later that afternoon, picking up the kids from school was a different kind of torture. Mike and Sarah ran out, their faces bright. Where's Mom? Mike asked, looking past me for her car. Mommy needs some space right now, I told him, forcing a smile that felt like sandpaper on my face. She's going to stay with a friend for a little while. Their faces fell. Confusion, upset. It was the same look they had had all those years ago when Dad left. Why? Sarah asked, her lower lip trembling. Just grown-up stuff, sweetie, I said, pulling them both into a hug. My voice felt tight, constricted. Shielding them, that was the priority, protecting them from the raw, ugly truth. That evening was a blur of trying to reassure them, making their favorite dinner, playing games, all while my own world crumbled around me. I tucked them into bed, read them stories, trying to keep the tremor out of my voice. Then, once they were asleep, I sat in the living room, the quiet pressing in on me. I opened my laptop, typed divorce lawyer into the search bar. The path ahead looked long, ugly, and expensive. A profound sense of failure washed over me. Not just for my marriage, but for repeating the pattern. I had sworn I wouldn't. I had built a life, brick by careful brick, to avoid this very thing. And here I was, standing in the rubble. The house felt empty, a hollow echo of the family life we had once built, now shattered. Brenda tried to get back in. Texts, calls, tearful voicemails. She said she missed us, missed the kids, said it was a mistake, a moment of weakness, that she regretted it every single day. I didn't reply. I couldn't. The trust was gone, completely eradicated. It felt like watching a building crumble. Awfully, and there was no way to put the pieces back together. I insisted on separation, then divorce. There was no going back. The immediate fallout for Brenda was swift. Her new high-pressure job quickly became a high-stress one. The affair, coupled with the instability it created, began to affect her performance. There were financial repercussions. She had to move into a smaller, less expensive apartment. Her reputation at work was tarnished. I heard through the grapevine that Mark's company had launched an internal investigation into his conduct. It wasn't just my life she'd upended. His was in jeopardy too. My family and friends rallied around me. Naomi cooked meals, brought them over for the kids and me. Chloe spent extra time with Mike and Sarah, distracting them, keeping their spirits up. Dad, of course, was invaluable. He helped me navigate the legal labyrinth, shared his own experiences, the lessons he'd learned the hard way. He knew the lawyers, the tactics, the emotional toll. It's going to be a fight, son, he'd said, his voice grim, but you're doing the right thing. For those kids. The children in their own time began to understand. They were older now, not as young as I had been when Mom cheated. They heard things, saw things. Mike heard whispers from friends whose parents knew what was happening. Sarah picked up on the hushed tones of adults. They experienced their own pain, their own anger. Why did Mom do it? Sarah asked one night, her voice small. Didn't she love us? It tore at me. I battled for custody fiercely. I was determined to provide a stable home, the kind of unwavering stability I'd felt deprived of in my own childhood. I wouldn't let my kids go through what I had. Brenda's parents, initially bewildered and defensive, eventually became critical. As the full extent of her actions and their consequences emerged, they saw the wreckage she had caused. Their support, I heard, waned. In the small community we lived in, word spread quickly, the hushed whispers, the averted gazes. Brenda experienced the social consequences of her choices. Despite my raw personal feelings, I made sure the children maintained contact with Brenda. Weekends, holidays. It was important for them. I drove them to her small apartment, waited outside. I saw her then, briefly. Her face was often drawn, tired. The sparkle she once had was gone. I saw the increasing isolation, the regret etched into her features. She was, as Dad had always said, paying the price. The emotional toll on me was immense. Nights were long, filled with worry and a deep, aching sadness. But I found strength in my resolve, in the unwavering love of my children. They were my anchor, my reason for fighting. I heard later that Mark had either been transferred to a different branch in another state or quietly fired. His career, too, was in ruins. It wasn't something I actively pursued, not out of vengeance, but it was clear that the natural consequences of betrayal for everyone involved were unavoidable. The world, it seemed, had a way of balancing the scales, even if the process was slow and brutal. The divorce proceedings were long and arduous, a grinding process that felt designed to strip away every last bit of dignity. But I remained steadfast. I sat through the depositions, the mediation, the courtroom dates, my focus locked on the kids. That was all that mattered, and in the end, the judge saw it my way. Primary custody of Mike and Sarah was awarded to me, with Brenda receiving reasonable visitation. It was a victory, but a hollow one. No one truly wins in these situations. I couldn't stay in that house, not with the memories. I put it on the market, sold it as quickly as I could, and bought a smaller, comfortable home in a different neighborhood. It was a fresh start, a clean slate. I devoted myself to being a father, to rebuilding that foundation of stability and trust for Mike and Sarah that had been shattered twice in their young lives. We established new routines, new traditions, dinners around the kitchen table, movie nights, weekend trips to the park. I started going to therapy. It wasn't easy sitting there talking about the layered trauma, the echoes of my parents' infidelity, and now my own. But it helped. It gave me tools, perspective. It helped me untangle the bitterness, to process the anger, to stop blaming myself for what had happened. Brenda, meanwhile, was living alone. Her financial situation had worsened considerably, and the social ostracism in our tight-knit community was palpable. I heard she'd lost her management position. The initial anger I felt towards her started to mellow into something akin to pity, then a quiet understanding. She was indeed paying the price. Then, a few months into the divorce, a letter arrived, her handwriting. It was long, heartfelt. She took full responsibility, expressed deep regret, and asked for my forgiveness. I kept that letter for weeks, reading it over and over. Forgiveness. It was a loaded word. Could I ever truly forgive? Could I forget? I realized I couldn't forget the betrayal, the pain. But for my own peace, for the sake of the kids, I had to find a way to let go of the consuming anger. It wasn't for her, I decided. It was for me, for my ability to move forward. We established a civil co-parenting relationship. It was detached, functional, focused solely on the children's welfare. No personal conversations, no lingering glances, just logistics, schedules, and the quiet exchange of our kids. Years passed. The kids thrived. Mike became a good student, found a love for sports. Sarah grew into a bright, artistic young woman. I found a quiet contentment in my life. The house felt like a home again, filled with laughter and warmth. I occasionally dated, but I was always cautious. Integrity and trust were non-negotiable. I couldn't risk another betrayal, couldn't put my children through that again. I often thought about the cyclical nature of family patterns, how easily the past can repeat itself if you're not vigilant, if you don't consciously fight to break the chain. I recognize the enduring pain of betrayal, the deep wounds it leaves, but I also found strength in my resilience, in my ability to stand up, to rebuild, to maintain my self-respect in the face of such a profound violation. The scars remained quiet and ever-present, but they weren't marks of defeat. They were a testament to survival, a quiet resolve forged in the crucible of infidelity. I found peace in my Midwestern home, a single father having broken the chain of betrayal, building a new honest legacy for my children. The long shadow of my past still stretched, but I was no longer standing in it. I was in the light, moving forward.